My stepmother changed the locks while I was at school and put my stuff on the lawn. That was her biggest mistake. My mom died when I was 14, breast cancer. She was sick for about 2 years before that, and she planned for everything because that was who she was. She sat me down 6 months before she passed and told me she had put the house in a trust for me. She said the house was mine, and that nobody could take it, and that a lawyer named Herb was going to make sure everything stayed the way she wanted until I turned 18. She made me promise not to tell anyone, not my dad, not my grandma, nobody. She said people do strange things when they find out there's property involved and that I was too young to deal with that. I promised. She died in October, and I kept that promise through the funeral and through every single day after. My dad fell apart for about a year. He stopped working and barely got off the couch. I did everything in that house by myself. I cleaned, I made food, I got myself to school and back. I kept the lights on because the bills were set up on auto pay from the trust account Herb managed. Then he met Rhonda. She showed up about a year and a half after my mom passed, and within 3 months she had moved in. She was loud and she had opinions about everything. She rearranged the kitchen her first week. She took down my mom's pictures in the hallway and put up her own. She told my dad the living room furniture was outdated and got him to replace the couch my mom picked out. I told my dad I didn't want the pictures taken down. He told me Rhonda was trying to make the house feel like home for everyone. I told him it was already my home. Rhonda had a daughter named Casey, who was a year younger than me. Casey moved in over the summer and took the guest bedroom, which was right next to mine. Within a week, Rhonda told my dad that Casey needed more space and that my room was bigger, so we should switch. My dad asked me to switch rooms. I said no. Rhonda told him I was selfish. My dad came back and told me to switch. I said no again. That was the first time Rhonda looked at me like I was a problem she was going to solve. After that, everything I did was wrong. If I left a glass in the sink, Rhonda told my dad I was disrespecting her house. She called it her house. She said it to my face. She told my dad I had an attitude and that I was making Casey uncomfortable. My dad believed all of it because believing Rhonda was easier than dealing with me. Junior year was the worst. Rhonda started giving me a curfew 2 hours earlier than Casey's. She told my dad I couldn't have friends over because it disrupted the household. She went through my room when I was at school and threw away things she said were clutter. Some of that clutter was stuff my mom gave me. A scarf, a small jewelry box, a notebook she wrote in during treatment that she told me to read when I was older. That one almost broke me. I called Herb. I told him what was happening. He told me to hang on and that I was 16 and that in 2 years everything would change. He told me the house was still mine and that nobody had touched the trust. He told me to keep my head down and wait. I waited. The day it all fell apart, I was at school taking a math test. I came home and my key didn't work. I tried it 4 times. The lock had been changed. My backpack was on the front steps and 2 garbage bags of my clothes were on the lawn next to it. Rhonda opened the door and told me my dad had agreed that it was best for everyone if I stayed with my grandma for a while. She said the house needed to be a stable environment for Casey and that my attitude was affecting the whole family. I asked where my dad was. She said he was at work and that he knew about this and supported it. I picked up my bags and walked to my grandma's house, which was 11 blocks away. My grandma opened the door and started crying before I even said anything. I stayed with her that night and called Herb the next morning. I told him what happened. He said he'd handle it. He told me to stay at my grandma's and not to contact my dad or Rhonda. 3 days later, Rhonda got a letter from Herb's office. It informed her that the house she was living in was held in a trust and that the sole beneficiary of that trust was me. It informed her that she had no legal right to change the locks on a property she did not own. It informed her that she was being given 30 days to vacate. Rhonda called my dad. My dad called Herb. Herb told my dad the same thing the letter said. My dad called me. He was stuttering. I didn't answer his calls. Herb told me not to talk to them directly, and I listened. My phone sat on Grandma's kitchen table and buzzed every few minutes. I watched it vibrate against the wood while my hands shook. The first message said he needed to talk to me. The second one said Rhonda made a mistake and he could fix this. The third one said I had to understand how hard this was for everyone. I counted 11 messages in the first hour. They started apologetic and then got angry and then turned into begging. One said I was being unfair. Another said I was breaking up the family. The last one before dinner just said please over and over. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, so I put them under my legs and sat on them. Grandma made soup, but I couldn't eat it. She sat down across from me after she cleared the dishes. She told me about my mom before I was born. She said my dad's family tried to control everything about the wedding. They picked the venue and the flowers and told my mom what dress to wear. My mom fought them on all of it. Grandma said they thought she would just go along with what they wanted because she was young and quiet. She said my mom learned fast that some people see kindness as weakness. She said that's why my mom made sure the house would always be mine no matter what happened to her. She knew what people would try to do. I went to the school the next day and tried to pretend everything was normal. I sat through English and math and didn't hear anything the teachers said. At lunch, I went outside to sit at my usual table. Rhonda was standing next to her car in the parking lot. She waved at me. I froze on the sidewalk with my lunch bag in my hand. She walked toward me and started talking before she even got close. She said my grandma was manipulating me. She said she only wanted to help my dad move on from his grief. She said I was too young to understand how hard it was for adults to blend families. The school counselor came out of the building and saw what was happening. She walked over fast and asked Rhonda if she was a parent. Rhonda said she was my stepmother. The counselor told her she needed to leave campus. Rhonda looked at me like I was supposed to say something. I just stood there. The counselor walked Rhonda back to her car and waited while she drove away. I went to the bathroom and locked myself in a stall. My chest got tight and I couldn't breathe right. I sat on the floor and put my head between my knees until the bell rang. After school, I met Herb at his office downtown. He had me sit in a leather chair across from his desk. He explained that Rhonda had no legal claim to the house at all. He said she might try to argue that my dad had some kind of common law marriage right. He said she might claim that improvements they made to the house gave them equity. He told me these arguments wouldn't work, but they could drag things out. He asked if I was ready for this to get uglier before it got resolved. I told him yes, but my voice came out quiet. I needed to go back to the house to get some homework stuff I left in my room. Grandma drove me there after dinner. She waited in the car while I used my old key on the back door. The lock still worked on that one. I went upstairs to my room and found my backpack where I left it. I looked for my mom's notebook, the one she wrote in during treatment, the one she told me to read when I was older. I checked my desk and my bookshelf and under my bed. It wasn't anywhere. I went back downstairs and checked the kitchen trash. Empty. I asked Grandma when garbage day was. She said it was yesterday morning. The notebook was gone forever. I sat on the floor of Grandma's guest room that night and cried harder than I did at the funeral. Grandma came in and sat next to me. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then she told me my mom made her promise to tell me something when I turned 18. She said she thought I needed to hear it now. She explained that my mom knew she was dying. She knew my dad wasn't strong enough to protect me from people who would try to take advantage. She said my mom spent her last months making everything legally bulletproof because she couldn't be there to fight for me herself. My dad showed up at Grandma's house 2 days later. I was doing homework at the kitchen table when I heard his car. Grandma answered the door and told him I didn't want to see him. He asked to please just talk to me for 5 minutes. She looked back at me. I nodded. We went out on the porch. He looked terrible. His eyes were red and his shirt was wrinkled. He said Rhonda didn't know about the trust and she felt blindsided. He said she was scared about where they would live. He said I needed to understand this was hurting Casey, who didn't do anything wrong. I told him Rhonda threw away mom's notebook. His face went pale. He said maybe I misplaced it. That's when I knew. He was never going to choose me over her. I went back inside and closed the door. At the school the next day, 2 of my friends from middle school walked past me in the hallway without saying hi. At lunch, I sat at our usual table and they sat somewhere else. I found out later that Rhonda had been calling their parents. She told them I was lying about being kicked out. She said I ran away because I didn't want rules. She said my grandma was poisoning me against my own father. I ate lunch alone in the library. My phone rang at 2 in the morning. It was my dad. He said he was at the hospital. He said he was having chest pains and he needed me to come. He said the stress was killing him and he couldn't lose me too. Grandma drove me there in her pajamas. We found him in the emergency room. The doctor said it was a panic attack, not a heart attack. They were going to keep him for observation. Rhonda showed up 20 minutes later. She saw me sitting in the waiting room and glared at me like this was all my fault, like I should have just given them the house. My phone buzzed the next afternoon while I was in history class. It was a message from Casey on Instagram. She said her mom told her I was trying to make them homeless. She said she never did anything to me, so why was I punishing her? I wrote back during passing period. I explained that her mom changed the locks and threw away my dead mother's things. I told her about the notebook. Casey responded that her mom said I was lying. Then she blocked me before I could say anything else. Herb called me 2 days later while I was sitting in Grandma's kitchen doing homework. He said Rhonda hired a lawyer and they were threatening to file a lawsuit. The lawyer claimed adverse possession and wanted money for improvements they made to the house. Herb explained that adverse possession meant they were trying to say they owned the house because they lived there, but it was a stupid argument that wouldn't work. He said the real problem was that going to court would take months instead of weeks and cost money from the trust account. I asked how much money, and he said maybe $5,000, maybe more if Rhonda dragged it out. I told him to do whatever he needed to do because that house was mine and my mom made sure of it. 3 days after that, Herb called again and he was laughing. He said Rhonda's lawyer sent a letter demanding $50,000 for the kitchen cabinets, bathroom renovations, and landscaping they did last year. Herb read parts of it out loud and kept laughing between sentences. He explained that you can't just improve someone else's house without permission and then demand they pay you back. He said it showed how desperate Rhonda was getting and that her lawyer probably knew the case was garbage but was taking her money anyway. I sat on Grandma's couch that afternoon and opened my laptop. I needed to write everything down before I forgot the details. I started with the day Rhonda moved in and how she took down my mom's pictures in the first week. I wrote about the room switching demand and how she gave me earlier curfews than Casey. I wrote about every time she went through my stuff and threw things away. I wrote about the jewelry box and the scarf and the notebook. I wrote about how she called it her house to my face. I wrote about the locks being changed and my bags on the lawn. It took me 3 hours, and when I finished it was 7 pages long. I sent it to Herb and he called me back within an hour. He said it was perfect and that if we ended up in front of a judge this would show a pattern of harassment. He said writing it all down was smart. I didn't tell him that reading it back made me sick because seeing it all in one document made me realize how bad it had been for so long. Dad showed up at Grandma's house 4 days before the 30-day deadline. I was in the kitchen making a sandwich when I heard his car. Grandma answered the door and they talked in low voices for a minute. Then Dad came into the kitchen alone. His eyes were red and his hands were shaking. He said Rhonda told him if he didn't fight for the house she was leaving and taking Casey with her. He was crying and his voice kept breaking. He said Rhonda wanted him to get a lawyer and fight the eviction. He said she told him I was being selfish and that Casey shouldn't have to change schools. He asked me to please let them stay just 2 more years until Casey graduated, and he promised Rhonda wouldn't bother me anymore. I looked at him standing in my grandma's kitchen begging me to give up my house so his wife wouldn't leave him. I said no. He stared at me for a long time, and then he turned around and walked out without saying anything else. I heard his car start and drive away. Grandma came in and hugged me, and I didn't cry because I didn't have any tears left for him. The deadline was 3 days away, and Herb called to say Rhonda still hadn't packed anything. He filed for a formal eviction order with the court, and the sheriff would supervise on eviction day. Herb asked if I wanted to be there, and I said no. He asked if I was ready to watch my dad get forced out of the house, and I said I wasn't watching anything. Grandma said she would go to make sure nothing of my mom's got damaged or stolen. Eviction day was a Tuesday, and I went to the school like normal. I sat through math and English English and lunch, and I didn't tell anyone what was happening. My phone buzzed during history class, and it was Grandma calling, but I couldn't answer. She called again during passing period, and I went into the bathroom to call her back. She said it was done. She said Rhonda screamed at the sheriff, and he had to warn her about interfering. She said Dad sat in his car in the driveway the whole time and never got out. She said Casey cried on the front lawn while the moving company loaded boxes into a truck. She said they were gone now and the house was empty. I went back to class and finished the school day and rode the bus to Grandma's house. We drove to my house together that evening. Grandma had the new key Herb gave her and she unlocked the front door. The house smelled wrong, chemical and sharp and angry. We walked through the living room and I saw gaps where furniture used to be. The couch was gone. The bookshelf my mom bought at an estate sale was gone. We went into the kitchen and I opened the cabinet where my mom's good dishes were kept. Empty. I checked every cabinet and they were all gone. We went upstairs to the master bedroom and that's when I saw the carpet. Rhonda had poured bleach all over it in huge, irregular stains. The smell was so strong my eyes watered. I walked through every room looking for what else was missing or destroyed. The guest room was fine. My old room was fine. But the master bedroom looked like someone tried to erase it. I sat down on the floor in the hallway, and Grandma sat next to me. She didn't say anything, and neither did I. The next morning, Herb came to the house and took pictures of everything. He helped me make a list of what was stolen and what was damaged. He said we could file a police report and sue Rhonda in small claims court. He said it would cost more time and energy and court fees. I was so tired. I told him to file the police report and send one letter demanding my mom's dishes back, and then I wanted to be done. I didn't want to spend another year fighting with Rhonda in court. I just wanted her gone from my life. Herb said he understood and that he would handle it. Grandma and I spent the next 2 weeks cleaning the house. We hired someone to replace the carpet in the master bedroom. We repainted the walls in colors my mom would have liked. Soft blue instead of the beige Rhonda painted over my mom's yellow. I found some of my mom's things that Rhonda missed. A sweater in the back of the hall closet. 3 books on a high shelf in the guest room. A coffee mug with a quote about strength that my mom used every morning. I cried over each one like finding pieces of her that survived. We cleaned and painted and replaced, and slowly the house started to feel less like a place where bad things happened. 2 days later, a letter came from Rhonda's lawyer. It said she would return the dishes if I dropped the police report. Herb called and said he could negotiate. He got her to agree to return everything she took and pay for the carpet damage in exchange for me not pursuing charges. I said yes because I wanted it over. The dishes arrived in a box 2 days after that. They were wrapped carefully in newspaper and bubble wrap. Every single one was there and none of them were broken. I unpacked them in Grandma's kitchen and put them in the cabinet, and I wondered if maybe Rhonda felt guilty after all, even just a little bit. A letter showed up in Grandma's mailbox 3 days after the dishes arrived. My name was written on the front in my dad's handwriting, and I stared at it for a full minute before opening it. The paper was thin and covered in his messy print. He said he was sorry for not protecting me. He said he knew he failed both me and my mom. He wrote that he and Rhonda were separated now, and that he was living in an apartment alone on the other side of town. He wanted to try to rebuild our relationship if I was willing, but he understood if I wasn't ready. He included his new address and phone number at the bottom. I folded the letter back up and put it in my desk drawer without answering. Grandma asked if I was okay, and I told her I didn't know yet. The school counselor's office became my regular stop every Thursday during lunch period. She had a couch that was too soft and a box of tissues on the table that I never touched. We talked about everything that happened with Rhonda and the house and my dad sitting in his car during the eviction. She told me that my dad's weakness didn't mean he didn't love me, but it also didn't mean I had to forgive him right now. She said healing doesn't follow a schedule, and that it was okay to be angry and sad at the same time. I asked her how long it would take before I stopped feeling both things at once. She said she didn't know, but that feeling then meant I was working through it instead of pushing it down. I started going every week after that. March 18th would have been my mom's 45th birthday. Grandma and I drove to the garden center that morning and bought flats of flowers in all the colors my mom loved. Purple petunias and yellow marigolds and pink impatiens that would bloom all summer. We spent the afternoon digging in the backyard dirt and planting each one in careful rows. Grandma told stories about my mom as a teenager, how she always had dirt under her fingernails from helping in the garden, and how she said flowers were the best kind of hope because they came back every year. We talked about how she would have loved knowing that her plan worked, and that I was safe in the house she protected for me. I pressed my hands into the soil and felt something settle in my chest. Even though she was gone, she was still taking care of me through everything she put in place. I'm living with Grandma until I turn 18 in 4 months. After that, I'll decide whether to move back into the house or rent it out while I go to college. I have applications sitting on my desk and acceptance letters starting to arrive in the mail. I have my mom's house and my grandma's support and a future that's mine to choose. I lost my dad along the way, and the house will always carry sad memories mixed in with the good ones. But I'm standing on solid ground that nobody can take away from me. The trust my mom built holds everything in place just like she promised it would. I water the flowers in the backyard every evening and watch them grow taller. Some days I'm angry, and some days I'm sad, and some days I'm both at the same time. But I'm here and the house is mine, and that's enough for right now.